All right, ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back once again to a virtual summit on DM Radio. And first, I can't miss an opportunity to promote the world's first made for TV webinar series, Future Proof. Check your local listings. We're in Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Los Alamos, Champaign, Urbana, all kind of places. Two places in New Hampshire. So we're all over the place teaching the world about how today's technology designs tomorrow. So let's dive in on Gen AI, preparing for the AI overthrow. Not to be a bit melodramatic. Today's speakers, Dave Duggal, founder and CEO of Enterprise Web. We've got Michael Vanca. We have Amir Hartman, and of course, yours truly. We'll be talking to all those gentlemen once the show starts proper. So, Gen AI, ground truth required. One of our regular listeners, Alex Husky, made a great point a while ago. He said, we can't allow these things to pattern recognize their way to the truth. It's a very interesting point. There's no North Star in Gen AI. We just have models that have been trained on tremendous amounts of text and imagery. And so they reflect back patterns according to what they've seen and according to your prompt. This means they don't know right from wrong. All they know is the patterns that they've seen. This is why it's important to have good data to train your models with. If you train the models with bad data, you're going to get really bad answers. It's not what you're looking for. So we have to understand that the ground truth has to come from somewhere. We'll talk about RAG at some point during this program, retrieval augmented generation. That's where a lot of the data quality stuff is going to be baked in. But it's really important to understand that we need ground truth. This is a military term. That shot is actually from a video from the front lines of the war in Ukraine, right before that Russian soldier says bye-bye, because a Ukrainian shot him from the trenches. It's just crazy video that I dug up because I watched that stuff. But ground truth basically means what's really happening. So you might hear about something in the news. Oh, there's no conflict in this area, and then bullets fly over your head. You're like, yeah, there is. So that's ground truth. We have to inject ground truth into these models somehow, some way, in order to really make sure that they're doing what we want them to do. So moving right along. What are they good at? They're made for writing. That's the whole point, right? They're made to be writing things. That's what we want them to be doing. And they're very excellent at that. So they're great at creating 10x writers, basically. And remember, what we've done here is we took all this text and then we trained models with it. And that doesn't mean the models are actually capturing the text verbatim. Rather, they're using the text to adjust their parameters, the weights and biases in their parameters, of which there can be billions. And I hear there are trillion parameter models now. Although I'm told that size isn't always important. It doesn't have to be bigger to be better, is the point. So that's key. There are small language models that we want to watch out for as well. So for anything that's widely published, it's going to be really good, like how a radiator works or how, for example, a computer chip can be manufactured. Anything that's been widely published about, they're going to be pretty good at mimicking it, showing you. But the key is that they are consensus engines. What I mean by that is when you vectorize something, so that's what these engines are doing, and that's what you do with your RAG model with a vector database, you are taking text and converting it into mathematics, basically into a vector, a point, an array, a point and a distance and a direction, etc. So dog references will be over here, cat references are over here. Different objects, different concepts will be represented in different ways, and then it can actually understand context in certain ways by the words around it. So you can vectorize not just single words or letters, but also paragraphs, whole pages, and that vector landscape is then used to reflect back text according to your prompt. So for fringe topics, for something that has not been widely published, that's where you're going to get hallucinations. But as long as you stay in the main things that have been talked about or written about extensively, you should be okay using these large language models. But always check your work, obviously. It's fantastic for summarizing. So for anything that's complex, it's really, really good at summarizing complex topics and giving you what is basically a dynamic Cliff's Notes. That's what you're looking for. You want the ability to just scan through complex documents, get the key points, and really kind of get somewhere. With the appropriate tooling, this can be very powerful. So we did a webinar recently with Click, which bought Kindi. It was KYNDI. Kindi was one of the best LLM tools that I've come across because it was able to not just summarize documents, but when you asked it a question, it would give you the answer and then show you where it got the answer. So citations are baked in. That was the missing ingredient for LLMs are the citations showing you where it came from. Of course, these guys are all working on that stuff right now, but to have the citations lets you see where it's coming from. That's really, really important. And of course, you got to watch out for context windows. Context windows is like your attention span, basically, for a human. How long is your attention span? If you're talking to someone trying to explain something and you take too long to explain it, you've gone beyond their attention span, outside their context window. Things are going to change. You're going to start to get different answers. So you always got to watch out for that. They're great for coding. My first revelation is, hey, if they can write in Spanish, French, and German, I bet they can also write in COBOL and Java and HTML. And guess what? They can. So they're very good at getting you like 80% of the way there. This is what people are telling me. It's good at that, which is really good. And they're also getting good at explaining code, which is extremely valuable. Uh, oops, I'm going the wrong way. So support, customer support. This is also low-hanging fruit. If you're able to train a model, for example, or use a RAG model to do this, load in all of your customer support tickets. Guess what? 80% of them will be very common, like I lost my password or what's your address, basic stuff like that. Old chatbots could do this fairly well, but chatbots probably came out a bit prematurely, and that's why they got some bad reviews and some bad raps. But these new AI infused chatbots are getting very, very good. And if you're careful about how you work with them and curate them over time, they'll be excellent at solving all kinds of your problems. And that's really, really good news. So from rag to riches, retrieval augmented generation. This is really important stuff. Came out of Meta, and basically it was a way to ground the results from large language models. And I predict that these RAG models are going to incorporate many of the traditional functions of enterprise software, like data quality, like security, like data governance. Even analytics can be baked into a RAG model. So in the RAG model, you do various things. You do your prompt, you pull some information back, maybe you check local sources. That's your vector database, for example, to give it the context and give it the fact base that you want. You want it to work out of a fact set that can be baked into a RAG model, into a vector database, for example, from your own enterprise data. That is good stuff. And then I'm told that the real magic is going to be called hybrid search, where you use SQL as well. It's all about the where clause. That's what Shruti Bhatt from Rockset was telling me just the other day. So you're not just asking the LLM, you're asking the LLM and you're asking a traditional system, and you're fusing those results to get a more meaningful answer for your question. And what it is not, okay? They're not for math problems. You don't want to give it a very complicated math problem. It doesn't have a math engine. I predict that they will have math engines before too soon. That's my prediction. But they're not a math engine right now. They're also not good for doing things like regression analysis, for example. Remember, it's a text generator. It's going to generate text in a format that you specify, and you can tell it things like no bullet points, longer paragraphs. It's really interesting how it can understand those things, but it's also really not a reasoning engine. So it's not going to solve these complex word problems. I've seen folks on LinkedIn trashing ChatGPT because it didn't get a word problem correct, and it's like that's not its purpose. And maybe you've heard of a word malapropism, which is a gross misuse of a word. I would argue some of these use cases, like the New York Times editor trying to see if it's sentient, that is a misuse of the technology, or I call it a malatechism. Don't use it for that stuff. Use it to generate text or to generate images. Other models are going to come out, reasoning engines, which will solve deeper problems. So here's what I think is going to be the future, and I'll be curious to see who comes up with this. I came up with this term of executive cockpit, and basically just imagine your senior leadership having a natural language interface where you've got a RAG model set up, a vector database to train. To load your enterprise data, and you train it on your CRM, your ERP, your sales systems like Salesforce, your support tickets, whatever you've got, train it or fine tune it. You can do this various different ways. And then guess what's going to happen? Your executives are going to have the ultimate executive cockpit where they can sit and ask any question about the business. Bake in some recency bias with a metadata layer, and you'll be able to find really important stuff. Just ask questions like, where are we in terms of marketing to our plan right now? Where are we in budgeting? Who can I lay off and not suffer too much difficulty from our staff if we have to cut costs? All these things will provide a real-time view, and I predict a lot of this stuff is going to eclipse and frankly obviate a whole lot of traditional enterprise software in the business intelligence and decision support space. So your data too will be assimilated. It's coming, folks. And now we'll get ready to start our show.